Teddy here with Doc Holiday. I found him on the TikTok For You page. I am addicted to the FYP. I learned stuff on there, and he's kind of one of the people that stood out to me. Since, I'm a Christian too, and so is he, there's a lot to talk about or kind of ask about. But if you wanted to do a quick intro about, who you are, how we could find you, we'll just jump in, man.
All right. Well, I'm Dakala. You can find me on TikTok, basically. I do have a page here on YouTube where I've done some stuff back in the past. If you want to catch those videos, that's dead hidden. And yeah, basically just make scientific, biblical content for YouTube or TikTok to just spread the gospel in every way that I can, basically. And so I don't really have a lot going commercially about that. I'm not trying to make celebrity of my name or anything. You can check me out on TikTok or YouTube, and past that, I'm just kind of a normal dude. I have a family, and I have a business, and we try to live quiet and peaceably and work with our own hands. And I'm just here to talk, man, whatever you want to talk about.
Good stuff. Which part of the U.S. are you from or around?
Well, I grew up in Kentucky, and my people are from there in Michigan, and so I moved up to Michigan for a few years and then back to Kentucky. And when my wife and I got married, we did some traveling around and ended up in Alaska. And we actually did about 10 years in the bush up in Alaska off-grid in a cabin, and raised 3 kids, little kids when they were little. They're growing up now, turning into teenagers, and we've moved to Texas. So we kind of been all over. Currently, I'm enjoying the Texas winter. Is not as brutal as the Alaskan winter for certain.
Yeah. How do you know? Did I mention I was from Texas?
No.
Yeah. I was born and raised in, kind of moved around. I was born in Arlington. I moved around. I went to Grand Prairie and Plano and grew up there. I graduated there. So you're in Texas now?
Yeah, we're in Northeast Texas, enjoying the warm weather. It was cold for a few days there, but it finally warmed up on us.
How far are you from Plano?
I have no idea. Texas is pretty huge. We're like right up in the top northeast corner.
Oh yeah, because we're just right out. We were right outside of Dallas, around Frisco, that area. So, 20 minutes from Dallas.
That's about 3 hours away from us here.
Okay, yeah. Then you're way up north, closer to.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of the cows, man. There's nothing but cows everywhere around here, so I don't mind it too much. They often make an appearance in my TikTok videos in the audio, and people are like, "What was that noise?" It's Black Angus cows, free ranging in the field.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we drove by pastures. I just wonder how much those cost. Would love to retire there in a farm.
I don't. I guess it depends on what you're after. This house that we moved into, that we bought sight unseen, is an old farmhouse. It was built in like 1950s or something, and all the appliances were from the 70s, and so we had to replace everything when we got here. So if you buy cheap, you're going to end up, I think, repairing stuff, and otherwise everything seems to be expensive. But the housing market seems to be moving now, so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So you're a family man too. How many kids do you have? If you don't mind.
I got 3 kids. Been married to one woman for 20 years. Just about. We're about to celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary, and she's followed me all over on my wild adventures here. So we're living the dream now.
That's wild.
I think that
young man.
Well, I'm in my 40s, my approaching mid 40s, and I'm almost feeling like now is the time where like my prefrontal cortex is fully developing as a man with my emotional intelligence and all that. Finally, I feel like I'm maturing, and I think people call this midlife crisis. Typically, when it happens to them, they don't know what to do with themselves, because when all that happened, the brain is such a tricky thing. Your whole reality and how you perceive life and everything gets turned on its head when you like mature all of a sudden, And most people call it midlife crisis. Most dudes don't know what to do with it. I just double, triple, quadrupled down on my family and denied my flesh and locked into what I was doing as much as possible. And now I'm seeing the fruit of that change, or that rite of passage. I don't know even what to call it. I think that it's largely been forgotten in our society, but it's really real. People go through it. maturing and growing up, we lived a bunch of adventures in Alaska. Like, I lived out my boyhood dreams for when I was young. Growing up, I lived in a trailer. We were poor. My dad was a cop. My mom worked for a Section 8 housing authority. And I watched movies with my sister, you know. And so Indiana Jones and Quartermain and King Solomon's Mines, all the adventure stuff really got my attention. And I hatched a plan to go to Alaska, and we ended up there somehow. And it's been a wild adventure, man. But finally I'm starting to mature. I don't mean to ramble on here about this, but it's been a kind of a big deal in my life. Finally starting to mature and see things totally different than I did, and being grateful for things that I was taking for granted, and really recognizing God's blessings, even though going through it to get there isn't beautiful when you're in it. Seems grievous sometimes, learning and growing. But once you get there and start to recognize the blessings, it's really great, man. Sticking with having one wife for 20 years and raising 3 kids and seeing all the stuff that comes from growing as a family, it's been really great.
Wow. 20 years. That means you got married young, and your kids are probably grown up now.
No, I got married when I was 28. No, wait, how old was I? 23. We had our first child when I was 28. I'm horrible at numbers, and I'm totally time blind, so I have no idea. We met when we were 20. We got married when we were 23. My wife's in here helping me out with the story. Wow. Met when we were 20, got married when we were 23, had our first child when I was 28, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
And so our oldest kid is now approaching 15, 16. She is 15. She's approaching 16. She's looking to get her driver's license and all that now, and it's just like, what happened to the time?
Oh man, I have a daughter too, but she's 3, and I'm like, dude, I want to keep her as, you know, I just see her grow up so fast, and it's like, man, slow down, you know, let me hold you a little longer.
When mine started beating me mercilessly at Call of Duty, bro, I knew it was all over for me. I'll never gain the upper hand ever again. She's got me now, you know.
Yeah. So you have one daughter and 2 sons, or 2 daughters?
I have 2 daughters, and my youngest child is my son, and he is 11. He's almost 12 now. Wow, and he's also a menace.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, still young, but, you know.
Yeah, still pretty young. We got a ways to go raising the kids in the house yet. But he's smarter than I am, and so he's probably been my number one catalyst for growing up and maturing as a man, is having to negotiate with my son almost over. His arguing is not, his arguments are so intelligent that if I don't have pure and perfect logic with what I'm telling him to do or why to do it or such a thing, man, am I in for it, because he'll twist me up and be like, no, that's not how we're going to go. And I'm saying, son, I don't think you know how this relationship works, but we're figuring it out. So
Smart kid.
Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so behind you. I'm in my early 40s. Just turned 41. So a lot of the shows you watch, I probably watch too, films and stuff.
Sure. All of them, dude, almost.
5 years old and 3 years old, I believe, or 4 and 3. I don't remember.
Well, you'll probably do better at it than I did, man. I know it's kind of typical to have kids in your 20s and stuff, but I was so immature when we had our first child, and then I was terribly immature when we had our second and our third, and it's almost like me and my wife grew up because we had to raise our kids, if that makes any sense. Even as an adult, you can skate by pretty good in life without too many responsibilities if you don't have kids, but as soon as you have kids, man, everything changes. And so doing it young was, in today's society, I don't think we know hardly anything until we get older anyway. So you'll probably do better at it than I have done, already kind of approaching that midlife area where your emotional intelligence finally catches up, and kids are a struggle to deal with if you don't know what you're doing, and how can you know what you're doing until you're doing it, I guess.
Oh yeah, and it's funny, like a lot of complaints these days about unmarried people is that they don't want to have kids because they don't have the money, and then once they do have the money, it's like they don't want to have kids because they don't want to give up the lifestyle they have. It's like, Okay, whatever you say.
Well, I mean, if they don't want to give up that lifestyle, they should definitely not have kids, man, because, I mean, it comes a thing where even your family becomes your friends that you hang out with at some point, because there's always something that they're wanting to do, and you want to do it for them so that they can experience, have a good life and fun experiences and stuff. And so I ended up sacrificing all kind of like guy groups or friends groups that I used to go hang out, stuff that I used to do, and now I do those things with my kids and with my family instead. And so, I mean, it's kind of a balance how it goes, I guess.
That's dope. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize that. But yeah, I'm starting to, like, all that friend time I used to have is now with the kids and the fam, so, and the wife.
It is.
So.
And that's kind of natural and normal. And they do grow up, though, and you do get it back. You know what I mean? Towards the end. It's like a 20, 25-year commitment, depending on when they're going to leave the house. And then you get your time back and your hobbies back and all that.
That's cool. That's cool. But yeah, so, but dude, it was really interesting learning about that, actually. Because I'm a young dad, so I need all the help I can get. But yeah, I did find you on the FYP, and what stuck out to me was your kind of non-traditional approach to spirituality, and more so the symbolism in the Bible, which I've never heard people talk about. Like, I was going through your playlists yesterday. Yeah, gosh, I must have watched like 20 videos of yours or something. But what stuck out was the toroid. That was fascinating. Now, from the cellular level to the galactical level, the toroid shape and behavior is like the exact same or something, right?
Yes. So, what I stumbled upon, I'll tell you how I got there to begin with.
All right.
I was reading, first of all, I've got like the pattern recognition synapses in my brain that don't quite go away. Normal people, their synapses come and go depending on what the situation calls for. My brain just keeps what I've connected usually, and it doesn't get rid of those synapses. And so whenever I read things, there's always like a reference library to attach it to in my mind. So that's where I start from when I'm reading stuff. If I've read stuff before, I can make connections there because those synapses never go away like they're supposed to. And that's called autism traditionally, I guess, is what I'm trying to dance around there. I've never been officially diagnosed with autism, so I can't like say I'm autistic, but I mean, Yeah. So, reading in Ezekiel chapter 1, he sees a vision of the wheel within a wheel and the four creatures of the throne of God and the throne of God and God sitting upon his throne. And so, reading through that, one day it really struck me like, what did Ezekiel see? Like, this isn't just cherubims in a bit or Ophanim or stuff that you see on the internet where they say he saw angels. Now, he saw way more than angels. He saw the four creatures of the throne of God and God sitting on the throne and driving reality, basically, I think is what the vision was. He saw God sitting upon his throne, driving reality, the seven spirits of God going to and fro in all the world throughout the ages to show his strength to those whose hearts are inclined towards him. That's mashing a bunch of scriptures up together there. Solomon said, that thing that was is that thing that shall be again. There's nothing new under the sun. History repeats. And we all know that as like a cliche, right? It's almost intuitive. History repeats. Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. And ever so often, we're going to go blind and ignorant towards the past and get caught up in what we're doing now and forget all about what happened before and then run headlong into history repeating itself, right? That's how we end up in World War III. After fighting two already, we should know how to avoid this, but it's fairly inevitable because history repeats and we do go blind after a time. Even you have knowledge, come into an awakening of some sort, and people get lazy and spoiled through those times. It's a cliche, the fourth turning, all this talk where good men make good times make soft men make hard times make good men make good times, you know. The turning of the seasons.
Like that. So are we the recipients of the weak men right now?
Oh, yes. Yeah, without a doubt. We're inheriting the catastrophe. That's why it's all falling down. And it's not just human history that repeats, all right? So it's not just some scenario where, oh, we're going to World War again. No, like the earthquakes are ramping up everywhere and the volcanoes are popping off and there's crazy signs in the heavens again and weather phenomena going wild and there's catastrophe everywhere. It's not just like the energy of mankind has turned up into a frenzy. It's like the energy of the whole world has turned up everywhere. The dials are turned up. And so in times like this, you're going to come into more discoveries and more knowledge and more understanding. Understanding is going to, and we're seeing this happen, and I'm not just making that up, with AI, obviously. Now we've got, whatever, they're firing up Willow over at Google, quantum AI and quantum computing, and they're really starting to fire stuff up now. And we're approaching the singularity at breakneck speed. And the singularity is the moment where our technology doesn't need us to improve it anymore. It can now take over those functions and improve itself. And so all the energy is turned up. It's not just like the men are excited and they're going to go to a war with each other. Everything is excited around the world. And I think this has everything to do with like the Schumann resonance, which is like, I guess I would describe as the brain waves of the earth, and people might have all kind of things to argue against me when I say that. But the frequency at which the Schumann resonance vibrates is the same relative scale as the human brain waves also vibrate. And so everything is interconnected, and I mean by energy. I don't mean to get all new agey and stuff, but at this point, we don't know that like everything is energy. If you've spent any time on YouTube looking up quantum physics or any of the Bill Nye Science Guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Mikhail Kachu, or whatever his name is, there's so many presentations on science and what reality actually is now, but they don't teach this stuff in school unless you go in for a specialized degree or something. But times like this, I'll just say, the energy of the earth does this. It ramps up and then it slows down and then it ramps up, and this is World War III, and then it slows down and this is peace times, right? Everybody's sick of war and it's a pendulum swinging back and forth. That's why the presidency goes back and forth between Democrats and Republicans, because it's a pendulum swinging to keep the balance, right? I don't mean to ramble on here. So interject anytime you want. But World War III comes with earthquakes, and it comes with threats of like, is that asteroid going to hit us all of a sudden? The chances of that, have you heard about that? The asteroid that NASA's saying? The chances of it have like doubled that it's going to hit us. Is that coming in 2032? Or are there two asteroids that they're worried about?
I think 2029 or something, like something close.
2029, 2032. I know that they're looking at asteroids, and the probability of us getting hit is going up. And it's not like a dinosaur killer. It's not like going to end the world or nothing. But depending on where it hits, they say it could be really bad for that spot. For sure, it'll kill a city entirely.
Yeah.
These kind of things are not isolated events in history that all this is ramping up together at once. If you go back into the timeline of world history and really look for it, you're going to see this time pop up over and over and over again. It's the same kind of scenario as what happened during the Bronze Age collapse. Volcanoes popping. It wasn't just sea peoples showing up on people's shores and ending their civilizations. It was also volcanoes popping off and famine and mass migrations, and everything ramped up all at once, and it all went south together, and then it picks up from there, and it's just this continuous flow of catastrophe and rest, and it is history repeating in every way that you can imagine. And that's because
what's the time frame in between those events?
I don't do numbers in time. I'm time blind, and so when I have to ask my wife what our children's ages are just to keep the only birthday I really remember is mine, because I saw it written down so many times. I probably should get it tattooed on me, but then people probably lose their minds. I don't like working on numbers. So there are some patterns, though. I mean, there's some pretty evident patterns. If I went and looked, I could probably pull them up for you real quick. Like 490 years is a pattern. 80 years is a pattern. 70 if the people are weak, but 80 if they are strong, it repeats. And that's like the fourth turning. That guy made that case in the fourth turning that every 80 years we have a pretty major conflict on U.S. soil because the weak men make hard times, and now we got to fight because we forgot what fighting was, I guess. And that's because the evil increases to a point where it can no longer be contained, and then people have to decide which side are you on, good or evil, and then they duke it out and find out that they're all rotten all the way around and decide to stop fighting and just do what Jesus said for a time, I guess.
Wait, so you mentioned that planets were, if I'm not mistaken, angels, right?
Yeah.
I remember in your videos. So what would a meteor be, or an asteroid be?
I don't know. I think that we have different examples in the Bible that we can look at. Like we see Sodom and Gomorrah, from heaven it rains fire and brimstone, right? So we see things fall out of heaven that aren't personified, right? I think it's akin to that. I think it's akin to... I mean, I don't know. I could speculate all day long without having a good, solid answer that I can for surely say, like, look, we have examples to know. But I think if we looked for examples in everyday stuff, we would find the answer there. It's almost like the scraps. You ever seen any construction zone where they're building a house or something and you've got the dumpster full of scraps left over from the constructing of the house? Yeah. I think it's akin to that. In every system, inherently, there is loss. But it's not like loss for no reason. It's like you needed that extra to be able to make a complete this, even if there was always going to be extra to throw away when you're done. It's inherent in every system is loss. To make a whole complete thing, you have to have parts and pieces trimmed off and thrown away. There's waste. And so I think that's kind of what it is. Like in space, there's debris left over from the creation of heaven and earth. And anytime God wants, he can throw it down. You know, it's not like just floating around there for no purpose. I think he knows what it's for and what it is and stuff. As far as planets and stuff go, I think that, or maybe even asteroids. And I know we were just talking about asteroids, but I think meteors are a little different. Meteors come in like every day, I think, almost. They're very common that meteors burn up in the atmosphere, unless I'm using the wrong word there. But there's space debris that always enters the Earth's atmosphere and burns up and stuff. We just don't know about it so much. And like during the meteor showers where all that debris is coming into the atmosphere and burning up. But as far as like big things that would come in and like really do destruction, I mean, the Bible mentions wormwood is a star that comes and crashes into the ocean. And so maybe I think that really what we're talking about here is when we talk about stars and planets and space and cosmological bodies or celestial bodies, they're actually scientifically referred to celestial bodies. If you look, talking about micro to macro, if you look down to the macro at the world of bacteria,
yeah,
you see like entire civilizations doing civilization stuff in a body, going to war with one another, establishing dominance, setting up cities or towns, or like taking over, populating. I mean, it's everywhere you look, it's the same activity on all levels. We look at bacteria, we can see bacteria in telescope and all that. Look, we can see the stars with our own eyes, and they're clearly on the next level up above us, not like you're not looking down, you're looking up. To be able to look down and know that the bacteria are alive, that those are living organisms contending for territory, looking up at the stars should be invoke the same thought, like that's alive up there on the next level.
So basically, all of existence is like a limitless fractalization of matter.
Well, I don't think it's limitless, but I do believe that every level is a sizable infinity. And what I mean by that is like in between the numbers 1 and 2, there's an endless amount of decimal point numbers, a sizable infinity. You know it's contained between 1 and 2, so it's sizable. But there is an infinite amount of decimal points that you could arrive at there. And so that's theoretical, sizable infinities, but they're demonstratable, such as the second dimension clearly has borders. Below it is the first dimension, above it is the third dimension, but are you ever going to run out of, isn't a line infinite in both directions? You know? By definition, there's no end of points to plot in the second dimension, though the second dimension is limited to the flat plane, right? The third dimension is limited to the 3D space, but within it, where is the end? They say space, is expanding into nothing. I guess it's becoming more is what it's doing. So if space is expanding, where is the end of the third dimension? There's not one. It's an infinite plane, but it's all contained within the third dimension, if that makes sense. And then there's another level for the fourth and the fifth and the sixth and all that, such and so on.
So can, how many dimensions do you think they are? And do you think that the dimensions beyond the third can exist in the same longitude, latitude point in time where you're sitting right now, as well?
Yeah, I think that, and this is probably going to quickly go into multiverse theory, which I'm not a total proponent of. Yeah, I think like the fourth dimension is time. And so it's best represented as time. It's also the sky. Like the third dimension is the earth and the sky is the fourth dimension. I would say space is like the fifth dimension. And so I'm using dimensions much differently than a lot of theoretical scientists are using the concept of dimensions. But I look at it that way. The earth is the third dimension and we're walking through the fourth dimension. We're walking on the surface of the third dimension through the fourth dimension, which is the sky, the breeze blowing past our face, which is time. And I mean more than just when you look up at the sky and you see the sun setting, the moon. We set our agriculture according to the phases of the moon, for instance. The sky does tell time for us, if that makes sense. And not only that, but the fifth dimension shines through and tells us the story of time repeating in the astrology, which in the Hebrew it's called the Mazzaroth. God did put the Mazzaroth in the sky, which is the 12 signs, and then there's even a 13th sign. And they do tell the story of the gospel of Jesus Christ. They tell the story of world history. They tell the story of any civilization. They tell the story of any nation or any town or any individual. It's the story that repeats in all things to all scales. Because it is that
in your videos that basically the story of birth and death is like repeatedly told throughout the entire Bible, from the Old to the New Testament. I thought that was interesting.
It is. It's the revelation of Jesus Christ behind a veil. So it's almost, I'll give you a direct example, like in 2 Kings chapter 9, when Elijah anoints Jehu, and he goes and gets all the followers of Baal into the temple of Baal, make sure there's no worshipers of God in here, he says, get them out of here if you find them. And then he bars the doors and burns the place down. And that's Armageddon, right? That's the story of Armageddon, where God gathers all the nations down together and deals with them all there at once. And then you keep reading, and he goes in, and Jezebel is up in the window talking trash to him, and he says, "Who's with me?" And 2 or 3 eunuchs pop their heads out, and he's like, "Throw her down." And so they do. And that's the fall of Babylon. Babylon is fallen. Babylon is fallen. It's just the same story that you read through the Revelation, told over and over and over and over again. And it's not told the same way, but if you pay attention, the Revelation has a pattern to it, an order of events. Mm-hmm. You take that and put it right over the Exodus, and it's the same story as the Exodus from Egypt. The trumpets are the plagues and all that stuff. They exit out at the time, represents the rapture and all the stuff. That story, the Revelation, is the story of the gospel. Imagine the gospel tells that story on the small local scale of Jerusalem through the vantage point of 12 individuals, Jesus and his apostles. 13, there was Judas. And after Jesus ascends and goes into heaven, the gospel is going to go out into all the world. And that doesn't only mean they're going to tell it to all the world. It means the story itself is going to be played out on the world stage now, so that the church takes the place of Christ in the story. And the church is many generations of Christians being born over and over and dying over and over, the children of God being born into the kingdom generation after generation while men live and die on the earth. And so that story is going to take a long time. If it's the same story as the gospel, but it's going to play out on the worldwide stage and the church replaces Christ, it's going to take a long time for the story to play out. And the thing about it is you can, and I've only just briefly touched on this here, like I could go really into detail about the order of events and how they play out and what the thing is. It's basically the hero's journey. The revelation is the hero's journey. That's where they got the hero's journey from, is the revelation of Jesus Christ, whether they meant to or not, because that pattern that is the revelation can be summed up this way. You might say, well, what pattern? What are you talking about? It's also when I say toroidal vortex, I mean that everything displays this, and you're going to know that what I'm saying is true, because the pattern of the revelation is very simply this: spring, summer, fall, winter, ye must be born again. Right? And so that's toroidal vortex. And what I mean by that is the new moon is completely dark. You can't see it. The new moon is like a full moon, but it's completely dark. And then it starts to wane until it's a full moon, and it's completely bright. And then what's going to happen inevitably, it's going to wax. Or no, I used those words wrong. First, it waxes towards full moon, and it's completely bright, and then it wanes again towards new moon, where it's completely dark. And that's just that same spring, summer, fall, and winter pattern. The sun displays the exact same thing in its traveling between solar maximum and solar minimum. Like the sun goes real active, and then it gets real dormant. It gets real active, and it gets real dormant. And so when I make this motion and say this is toroidal vortex, and this is just spring, summer, fall, and winter, spring, summer, fall, and winter, this is also the same deal. So when the sun goes solar maximum and solar minimum, and this is your heart beating in and out, this is you breathing in and out, this is you eating food and then using the bathroom. It's the story of everything, is that toroidal vortex, and it's simply just wave function. And the important part to know about that is that the fact that humans display the same toroidal wave function that the moon displays and that the sun displays when we're born as a little baby, we grow up, we reach our peak, we start to get old, and then we die. But we know by example that everything in nature shows us that it's never just this and ends. It's wave function. Jesus said, you must be born again. And so we know there's something else after this life. And we have a direct example. I don't mean to just ramble on, but we've all done this already. And what I mean is confirmed that there is an afterlife, confirmed the truth of the gospel. Every one of us started in our father's loins as a single-celled organism. And people might argue with me over it, but just, okay. We all did start in our father's loins as a single-celled organism, okay? We were born from our father first, before we were ever had a human body to be born of our mother. We were born from our father into our mother's womb. And then it wasn't guaranteed that we were just going to be born again. We had a race to swim. And people might say, well, I didn't ask to be born. And I'm like, you swam for your whole life and beat millions for that prize. You definitely wanted to be born. Like, you gave your whole single-celled organism life to run the race towards holy Jerusalem so that you can be born again as a human on the earth. And every one of us won that race. And it's just the gospel. You can say that a sperm swimming to the egg is just a clear example of the gospel of Jesus Christ. When the sperm gets let into the egg, it dies there. And that's what Jesus said, except a kernel of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abides alone. But if it dies, it brings forth much fruit, because you can't stay the seed. You want to be the plant, right? Mm. And so toroidal vortex is everything displays this, but not everything completes it perfectly, right? Like, there are rules in reality. If you don't follow them, there's definitely a consequence. So narrow is the way. Wide is the path that leads to destruction, but narrow is the way that leads to life, right? And this is given to us an example of sperm swimming towards the egg. How many millions don't make it each time? Only one gets to be born at a time there. And somebody might get real concerned, well, what about all those human souls? Well, they're not human souls unless they win the race and be born as a human. Then they're a human soul. We're talking about sperm do have souls. That's the breath of life. They definitely breathe. They definitely have metabolism. They definitely burn sugar and all that. But how many? You can't even. You know what I mean?
Infinite sperm. So there's infinite souls in your
But they're not human souls. That's almost the thing that people don't quite like. But does bacteria have a soul? Yeah, but does soul equal soul? No, bacteria soul doesn't equal human soul. It's totally different on a scale of like importance, and this is displayed in the Bible even when I think it's Jesus. It was Jesus, I think, who said, "Don't worry what you're going to eat or what you're going to wear. Look, the flowers are beautiful, and they didn't weave any fabric, and the birds are full, and God just fed them. You're worth more to God than many sparrows," right? Not one sparrow dies without God knowing about it. You're worth more than many sparrows. And so we see that there is like a value structure to souls, right? Yeah, a value structure to souls. And that's not to say that souls are worthless or that God doesn't have a plan or a thought or a thing. I'm sure he does, well beyond my imagination, you know. But I trust that kind of stuff to him. What we're worried about is human souls, because that's what he's told us to be worried about. And I'm kind to the creatures too, you know, but because they're subject to vanity, but only for a time. It's the same deal as, I think of dogs as like moons. You know, you got planets, you got stars, you got moons and such.
Hold on. Do you believe? Okay, there is a conspiracy going around. Different conspiracies. I'm sure you've heard them all. That okay, there is the moon. It is a natural formation of the universe, the galaxies, and then there's like, okay, on the far end, there's like, well, the moon was created by something or someone, and it is a vehicle. It's like, what? And then you have other people that say, okay, the moon. Can you hear the dogs? Sorry about that.
A little bit.
So, you know, also the moon is hollow. There's different, you know, dark side of the moon. What parts of those are likely, do you think, to be true, biblically true, and also, in your personal opinion, to be possible?
I think that God made the moon. It says so in Genesis, and I'm real staunch on sticking to the Bible. God made the moon in Genesis, but I think we misunderstand the moon as a celestial body. I will die on this next hill if I have to. The moon is in our sky. It's not in outer space. Okay, it's for surely not in outer space. I don't have to contend with anybody over that academically. That's well known, because there's a spot where the Earth's atmosphere extends so far, and then it changes. It gets real thin. Mm-hmm. But the atmosphere is not all that we're talking about when we're talking about the Earth's atmosphere. There's also the magnetosphere, which is the Earth's magnetic field that protects us from incoming solar storms and stuff like that. That's what's responsible for the northern lights, is when solar storms are hitting, the magnetosphere is peeling it back around so it doesn't hit the Earth directly, and we see the we see the borealis. But just in academic accepted science, the atmosphere extends so far before it gets real thin. And then there's a section there just after the Earth's thick atmosphere that they call space, and that's where the moon is. And then when you get to the end of the actual Earth's atmosphere, they call everything outside of that outer space. So to say the moon is in space is correct, but most people don't know that there's a difference between the term space and outer space and where that zone is. I include that space zone in our sky because clearly it's within the Earth's atmosphere, which does extend twice as far as the moon. The Earth's atmosphere extends twice. I don't care how thin it gets. It serves a purpose all the way to the edge, right? It's twice as far as the moon. And so the moon is in the sky. And that's why, and this explains it in a lot of different ways, not just one. First of all, it's why the moon's not on fire like the sun is, like the stars are, right? It's not shining bright and twinkling like those are. It does have a light, but according to science, that's just reflecting the sun. And we see that light go away and go completely dark by the end of it. The moon is in the sky because I don't divide it up between, there's two levels to the sky. It's just one sky. And then after that is space. Outer space is just space. Where the stars are, where the sun is, they're in space. The moon is in the sky. That's why it's different than the sun. I don't think the Earth or the moon is any kind of artificial anything. I think that it's a celestial body that hasn't made it all the way into heaven yet, if that makes any sense. Like, all the relationship with the solar eclipses, with the moon and the sun, that's not just symbolic or happenstance or some kind of coincidence that it just lines up that way. It's like an atom. You look at an atom in the probability cloud of the electron and all the squiggling around that happens in an atom, we would never think that any of that was just coincidence or happenstance, that just left over whatever from no, that all has a purpose and a point, and that all reality emanates from these little squiggly bits of energy in an atom and how they're arranged and what they're doing. It's the same with our solar system. The sun and the moon definitely tell the gospel of Jesus Christ every day and every year in an intricate dance across the sky in a universal language. That's what Psalm 19 says. The heavens declare the glory of God. It goes on to say how the sun represents Jesus Christ coming for his bride, which is the moon. You know, the moon is even she, and the sun is even called he in the Bible. And we see this dance of the moon going through the shadow of turning of doubt, and that calls to Scripture, until there be no more shadow of turning in me. The moon displays the church and the church's attitude and the church's behavior. And it even shows us that, you know, we do reach a point where we're full of understanding, we're full of light, we do know what's going on, we are following the right path, but then that slowly fades, just like that 80-year cycle where we end up at weak men again. Our understanding fades, we go to sleep. And this is also displayed in the garden when Jesus tells his disciples, watch and pray with me, or watch with me while I go pray. And they fall asleep. And he comes back and wakes them up and is like, you can't watch with me 1 hour, watch while I go pray. And they fall asleep. And he comes back again, he's like, what are you guys doing? Just watch one hour with me while I pray. And they go to sleep again, and when he comes back, Judas has brought the guards to come get him. And they were supposed to be watching for this, right? But they went to sleep. And so he walks up to him, doesn't even wake him up. He says, sleep on now. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners while y'all were supposed to be keeping watch. And so that going to sleep thing is what the moon shows us. We wake up, we're full of, energy and attention. We're all excited. We're turned on. We're into it. But then we get complacent. We get lazy. We get spoiled a little bit. And we end up going back to sleep. And then the hard time comes upon us, and that's what wakes us up, right? So the things that I'm saying, I'm probably doing a poor job of describing them all, trying to get it all described here in one place at one time, but it's evident everywhere, that simplicity of spring, summer, fall, and winter. And somebody will just say, well, that's just a life cycle. Yeah, it's funny that everything displays the life cycle. The reason that it does is because it's toroidal vortex. Everything is a toroid. And what I mean by that is your mouth is the white hole, your other end is the black hole. Imagine that we're in the stomach. And when we look up into space, we see the white hole as matter coming into the universe, right? Just like we would see if we were looking up from the stomach to the mouth, that's where the food comes in from. And if we were looking at the black hole and we're in the stomach, that's looking down, towards the waist bin there. We're going to see matter exiting through that hole, right? And so that's what we're seeing in space. I think white holes and black holes, and I know people say white holes are theoretical. I think they're less theoretical. I think maybe white holes are mislabeled. Anyway, a lot of that's theoretical to begin with. But the point is, if we're... Go ahead.
So if planets are stars, then is Earth a planet? And is Earth a star? Is Earth an angel?
Well, it's almost like this. Stars are stars. The sun is the sun. The moon is the moon. And the earth is the earth. Now, when we're talking about the earth is a place like heaven is a place. So heaven is a place full of stars, right? And the earth is a place full of humans. And that is the equivalency. So it's not like the earth is a star and there's more earths anywhere else. The earth is a place like heaven is a place. And what's in the earth is in the earth, and what's in heaven is in heaven. And I think the sun is a celestial body that has an angel in it. Not that the sun is the angel, but that's a body that an angel is in. That shows in Revelation 19, there's an angel in the sun that comes and calls all the fowls of the air to the supper of the Lamb, which is Armageddon.
Yeah, I misspoke. In your videos, you said like planets were angels or something.
Yeah, planets are
What was
fallen
the point?
angels. All right, so when we're talking about
Planets are
mythology,
fallen angels, right? Yeah.
yeah, they were stars, right? And they came too close to the earth, and that's what it kind of means to fall. Like I don't necessarily think of the solar system as NASA teaches it, and I definitely don't do the flat earth thing. I think it's something like more than both of those, if that makes sense. But I do count that, like, however they want to describe it in the math or whatever, the gravity counts, right? And we're talking about like things that are zooming around in an atom, like really decide what the atom is. Like hydrogen only has one electron. And if it has more than one electron, then it can't be hydrogen, it's something else now. And so in that kind of way, the solar system having all the different celestial bodies in it and the way that they are spinning around up there and rotating around stuff and the way that they interact with one another with the gravity or however you want to talk about it means more than just the mundane way that we think of it. I really believe that it's much more like an atomic structure where the stuff in the solar system really matters for how reality is going to present here, you know? Because on every level, the energy and the mass is distributed the same. And I mean from micro to macro. When I say levels, I mean how far you're zooming in or how far you're zooming out. The energy and mass is distributed the same. In other words, you're not going to look on a grand scale and find, oh, well, the energy is distributed differently here than it is. It's distributed the same on every level. Now, on every level, the laws of physics is what's organizing the structures or the mass and the energy into structures. And so when you have the same distribution on every level and the same laws organizing the mass and energy on every level, you're going to end up with the same exact structure on every level, like Russian nesting dolls or Mandelbrot set or Fibonacci sequence. It's going to be the same exact structure. The atom is a tiny little solar system, right? The solar system is a tiny little galaxy. It's all kind of form and function shaped up by the laws of physics out of an equal distribution of energy and mass into the same structures on every level. So when I say the planets are more than just up there spinning around, I mean they're spinning around, does stuff, it influences stuff in ways that we can't imagine yet. Like we will one day probably understand it a bit more, but even in the way of some of these, I'm not a proponent of astrology because astrology is the Greek bastardization of the Hebrew Mazzaroth, which has also been taken and mystified and all that. And I'm not into any of that. But the celestial bodies definitely directly influence the rise and fall of civilizations in the face of the earth. Even if you just wanted to talk about the sun and the moon shape the surface of the earth, I mean on a practical level of gravitational, what's it called? Deformation. When the moon pulls the tides as it goes around, the gravity from the moon pulls the tides. Why we have tides, they say. I know a bunch of people are going to lose their minds that I said that, but according to NASA, that's why we got the tides, right? Well, that same phenomenon happens with the crust of the earth also. It doesn't just stop pulling when it passes over the water. Like it starts pulling the crust, and there's elastic deformation of the Earth's crust when the moon goes around. In times of full moon, the moon and the sun are pulling against each other, and the Earth is in the middle getting stretched out like this. Not like drastically like a cartoon or anything, but for all it is happening that it's getting stretched out between the two. And in times where there's a solar eclipse where the new moon that you can't see because it's a new moon and it's dark goes in front of the sun. That's why you can't see it, is because it's on the side of the sun and goes between the earth and the sun. Once again, according to NASA, both the sun and the moon, first of all, the moon is very close to the earth in that situation a lot of times. Both the sun and the moon are pulling against the same point on the earth, and it goes like a dark band around because the earth is spinning, right? So the point is pulling at the earth, and when the sun and the moon are lined up against it, it's more dramatic. So the elastic deformation is greater in times of full moon or new moon. And a lot of people don't understand that the sun and the moon every day, and not just every day, but on a schedule that goes long term, are shaping the face of the earth little by little, year by year, century by century. And even just that to contemplate is enough, but I think it's far more than just that. In Genesis, it says they rule over the day and the night and divide the light from the darkness, and I think that means 10 different ways.
I know you mentioned the toroid vortex, if that's what it's called, shape as a waveform. And you know, as I have been kind of paying attention to how fast AI is developing and how it is kind of helping to cure certain diseases. There are those who think that death is a disease. Do you think it'll solve death?
Yeah, I think it will get there, and I think the Bible supports this idea, and I think that ties directly into the mark of the beast, and they will search for death, but death will not be found of them. I think that I can demonstrate that since ancient Sumer, and I'm talking about the mythologies and the religions, I think it's very demonstrable that they've been after immortality this whole time, right? They've been obsessed with the idea of living forever. And it ties back into, like, let's get back into stars or planets. Planets are fallen angels, right? And maybe they weren't stars. Maybe there's something classified less than a star there, right? That's okay with me. I'm not caught up on what exactly kind of celestial body they were, only that they are higher dimensional heavenly beings. When we talk about the gods from all the mythologies, we're talking about the ancient aliens from the TV show, whatever. The gods, the Anunnaki, are the planets. They were entities whose bodies were the planets, and they quit those bodies to come down to the earth and manifest in the flesh. However you want to see that. Maybe they had the people, instructed the people how to make them robot bodies, and then they dwelled in robot bodies. I don't presume to know. I know that idols has everything to do with it, and I know that idols has everything to do with robots, because here we are, right? And I can explain all that in great detail, actually.
Wait, so planets are disembodied souls of those fallen angels that came to Earth?
No, the planets are the bodies that the souls disembodied.
Oh, okay. The souls came to Earth.
Yeah, so imagine a planet isn't... Okay, we look up and we can see the planet through a telescope or whatever, and it looks like a sphere, you know, and it's shiny, it's got different stuff on it, features to it and such. And that's just what we can see with our human eyes and understand with our human brains. What we can't see is stuff like the magnetic field of those things without special equipment, right? And so when we talk about electromagnetic fields, that's what we're kind of getting close to. That's what definitely displays the toroidal vortex, right? On all structures, is the electromagnetic field is like the ghost of the signature that shows that shape exactly. It's exactly a toroid. And so we see the planets with our eyes, and we can't see the whole of that structure. We just see the part that we can see, right? We understand the structure as we can understand it, in the same way that we understand bacteria as we see them and apples as we see them. But what we can't see is what they actually are. That's just what form is presented. And I'm not trying to be weird or dumb when I say that. What I mean is, like, solid itself. The concept of solid is atoms vibrating so slow in a molecular bond that they produce a force field that can't be passed through, right, without being broken. And so when I'm knocking on my table here, my fist is never contacting the table. The force field around my atoms is contacting the force field around theirs, then there's like a reaction, and nothing is touching anything because the table is 90% empty space. And the fact that it's solid and has color and all this is literally a production of the toroidal vortex of the atoms in relationship with the molecules and little buzzing bits of energy coming together to interact to produce this illusion of a brown solid table. Now, you can understand that as best you can, because I can only understand it so far. Anybody that really claims to understand to know quantum physics, I can tell you for a fact though that everything you know as reality is little bits of squiggling energy that pop in and out of existence from nowhere, and this dance of squiggling and rotating and spinning around, that's why I say the solar system does more than we think it does. That dance itself is what produces what we know as reality. And then it gets real complex after that.
So basically, in all of existence, nothing touches. Nothing touches. It is.
There's nothing to touch, really.
Nothing that. Yeah. Everything is made up of the basic building block, toroidal
vortex.
Toroidal vortex, and that has a shape, and it moves a certain way, and then everything is made up of systems of that to make up the appearance of everything we see and touch.
Yeah.
And depending on properties, which I don't know how to measure, it makes this metal table a metal, or it makes this wooden table wood. But nothing touches. It just behaves.
Yes.
Around each other.
Yes.
So my hands aren't really touching. I'm just made up of the basic building block.
Yeah, it's just force fields, literally. Yeah, there's nothing solid there when you zoom all the way in. It's just force fields, and if you zoom all the way in, it's like two galaxies coming to collide, and it's mostly just empty space in there. And probability clouds are where things might be. And they might be waves, and they might be particles. It just depends on if you're looking at them or not. And so it gets real weird on that level.
It does, because if nothing touches, then our eyes are made up of this basic building block.
Right. Yes.
And the basic building block, that the system that makes up our eyes can only interpret other systems of basic building blocks.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
It's kind of weird, but
that was actually profound. Yes, we can only observe to the level that we're made of, basically. Yeah. That was actually really, really good. Not to mention, hold on, man, that just threw me completely off. I'm gonna think about that for a long time now.
But on top of that, even the brains in which we're thinking about this is also made up of the same stuff.
Right. And so it's limited to the parts and pieces. On top of that, even, everyone thinks of reality like, I won't argue against the fact that the earth is a place and it's here and it's real. Like, I don't have any argument against that. But I think that what we understand the earth as is completely wrong. I think the earth is more like a construct, because when you think about it, everything you see is your brain interpreting electrical signals that enter through your eyes from stimulus everything you touch, like we were saying, it's not even actually touching, is nerves carrying electrical signals to your brain. And this happens with all your senses all together in concert to produce reality itself. And I can say, I'm here, I'm on the earth. And now you're here, and there's other people here, and we can interact. And so we can know, hey, we're all here, and the earth is here, and so it must be all real. What we don't understand is, however you want to cut the cards, what we all know and love and talk about as earth and understand as earth is literally the hallucination our brain produces from a constant stream of electrical stimuli coming from the outside. And so it's almost like, is it a computer simulation? I mean, for all intents and purposes, our computer simulations are definitely based on our reality. I don't think our reality is a computer simulation, but our computer simulations are based on our reality. And so it kind of gives us an idea of the binary code flow. And you can see it. That binary code is the wave function, or the turning of the moon, or the solar min, solar max, or the seasons, or a baby growing up and dying, and a star.
The very air, right? That you're looking at the camera, or wherever you're looking, the very air in between your eye and the camera is also made up of, however many bits of building blocks. The same building blocks that make up our eyes are also, we can't see how many of those exact same things are between our eyes and the camera we're looking at.
Sure.
You also think that everything around us that we believe as air is also made up of toroid vortexes?
Yeah, well, I think, time itself is a toroidal vortex. I think reality itself is one. It's like Russian nesting dolls. So you're only going to find this, like, the galaxy itself is one also, and the universe itself is just a bigger one, and it's all toroids nested within that toroid, all the way down to the smallest toroids. It's all Russian nesting dolls, or nested toroids.
So the positive and negative space are both made up of the same.
So when you're talking about time is toroidal, I think time expands and contracts. So sometime, and this is actually theoretically proven, at least in the mainstream theories, it's like gravitational time dilation. They say that like there's presentations where they say if a star explodes, waves of gravity will stretch out across the galaxy and they'll hit. And as they're waves that come through. It's not just one wave, but it's like a ripple effect where all that energy is coming from the star. Time will slow down and then speed up, slow down and then speed up, slow as the waves pass over the area, as gravitational time dilation. Also, they say there's like a condensed pancake of gravity from the black hole in the center of the Milky Way. That's a thin disk it's called the galactic plane, okay? And so the Earth or the solar system doesn't just rotate around the galaxy, it wobbles up and down, showing that same wave function as it rotates around the galaxy, and it dips in and out of that galactic plane of concentrated pancake gravity. And every time it does, we go through a period of galactic or gravitational time dilation where time slows down. Now, because time is relative, if we're on the Earth when that happens, we don't notice a thing, right? But if there was a star watching us from outside the galactic plane, it would see us go in there, and then a few million years later, according to this dude's perspective, we'd pop back out of there again. Millions of years would go by according to the star's perspective, while only 1,000 years went by according to people on Earth. And this might be
Inception?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not Inception. Interstellar. Sorry.
Yes. I've seen them all, bro.
Every
yes.
There's that song that was playing, and every click of that song actually represented like 1 year or something,
Yeah, because they were on that planet, that water planet, and that dude was waiting on the spaceship for him, thinking that, they knew they were in for some kind of time dilation. They didn't know it was going to be like 27 years later, they come back to the ship, and they've only been gone for like 15 minutes. That's a perfect example of gravitational time dilation. So for this dude, it took 20 years for them to get back, and for them, they were only gone 15 minutes. And
hold on.
He got older, but they didn't. Go ahead.
Yeah. Like if the universe, according to our, how our eyes can perceive it is so vast, then why are we the only ones that? Why are we seemingly the only ones at the party?
We're not. No. So space is full of aliens, and I mean, they're not from Earth, but space is not the same as Earth. It's not like you're going to go fly through space and find another Earth to land on. I mean, maybe you will. I don't think of it that way, though. It's like when you leave the Earth, you go to a different place called heaven. And up there, the creatures are called angels. They're not like us. They're not made of dirt up there. They're immortal. They're celestial. They have bodies, and those are called stars and planets and moons and galaxies and all that kind of thing. So I don't think we're alone in all the vastness of space. I think we're alone as being humans. And the vastness of space is observably full of life, and they're called angels, and we call them stars, right? I think that it's just that we're looking at the next level up, and so you're not going to find us, our kind, our maker, our dirt make model up there in heaven where it's not made of dirt. We're talking about a different place where beings are made of plasma. Right? The stars are made of plasma, and we can only observe them as so much of a thing. We can't see their full form or what they actually are. We can only see what we can see. But that's a celestial, immortal body, And I mean a super advanced interdimensional being from heaven. It's an angel. And the stars are all low-level angels that we can see with our own eyes. Space is full of life. It's just immortal celestial life, not this mortal terrestrial. This is of the earth. That's heaven. This is the earth. That's what I think about it.
Do you think anything do you think our tech is good enough
Old news.
to create an X-ray vision of the entire inner Earth? Do you think anything lives down there?
I think that the earth is very akin to what we were just talking about, reality itself, where the hand in the table and the atoms, and it's really a bunch of empty space and squiggly energy vortexes that produce what we know as physical reality, right? I think the earth, all this debate about the globe earth or the flat earth, I think that earth is a like 5D holographic projection or whatever. That's probably a dumb way to say it, maybe not entirely accurate, but something akin to that, where earth is a byproduct rather than, does that make any, earth is produced. What we know is the earth is produced as such. It's not like, so when we're talking about earth is a toroid, okay, and sure, it might have a complete solid shape, might be a globe, I don't know, oblate spheroid, whatever. But that's just the top surface level of understanding of like what the earth actually is. I don't think it's any such thing as just some rock floating in space that all this magical stuff just happens to be happening on. I think the earth is like, oh, imagine the Nintendo. And this is a terrible example, but imagine the Nintendo. When you talk about a place being generated by forces and energy, I mean, you turn on the Nintendo and the programming code and all that produces this simulated world called Mario World, right? And you can go there and your avatar is Mario. You can't go there like this. If you're going to go into a lower second dimension world, because that's Nintendo is 2-dimension, you're going to need a 2-dimensional body to walk around in, and you're going to need some kind of controller to control that body, connection, right? And so you can walk around in a second-dimensional world called Mario World as Mario, right? In your avatar. In the same way, the Earth is a toroid, which has a plane of perception, I guess you would call it. It's the present. Above is the future, below is the past, and right in the middle is the plane of reality. And so they say it's a flat earth. Well, okay, it depends on your matter of perspective. Sure, whatever people like there, it's like, I think that's unimportant to think about what shape the earth is, because that's like, the least true thing about it is what you can see. Does that make any sense? Like, the information about it is actually much deeper than the surface level of what you, don't judge a book by its cover, I guess I'm saying. So when I say hell is in this, go ahead.
Yeah, like as humans, we're only like, as we talked about, the substance, the level of advancement of the substance, the systems that we are made up of is only that good, or that
yes, it's only
right?
that good, right? And that's why AI becomes so important to us, is because we can only see so much and so far, and we only have so much time to puzzle stuff out with our dirt brains. If we can get the energy and electricity doing it for us, you know, it's a different story. And so
you mentioned hell.
Yeah, so the earth is a toroidal structure, and hell is in the center of it, and people think, well, if I dig far enough down, will I find hell? I think maybe so. Like, yeah, it could be. But I think that hell isn't like a physical location in the center of the earth. Bodies don't fall all the way down into the center of the earth. You know, they rot from the grave, but they don't fall all the way down into this place called hell. But hell is guaranteed in the equation because it's like the black hole in the toroid. And that toroidal vortex that you can clearly see in everything, the black hole is always required. And we talked about that earlier. Your mouth and your rear end is the white hole in the black hole where information comes in and then information goes out. If you're in the stomach looking, that makes sense. If you're looking at space, we are in the stomach, so to speak, nested toroids. When we look up, we're looking at mouths eaten or backsides defecating, kind of, when we look at white holes or black holes. And that's not literal. It's just a matter of like metaphor and perspective. Information coming in, information going out. Black holes are like drains. You see, the yin yang is a toroid. Yin yang is toroidal vortex with a drain on each side, a white hole and a black hole, and it's the light dividing from the darkness, which is what the toroidal vortex represents. Everything in the universe is just constantly, even through the laws of entropy and thermodynamics, is constantly organizing more and more and more. It can be shown from the Big Bang till now, the light being divided more and more and more from the darkness until it'll be complete and total equilibrium where the light is completely and forever. And that pendulum won't swing. It'll be right in the middle in the narrow path, and light will be on one side and dark will be on the other, and there won't be any need for swing because there's no more draining to do, if that makes sense.
Wait, so if hell exists, and you said, okay, it's possible we could, dig into it, but how would we perceive it?
It's more like a magnetic trip. Imagine that your soul was magnetic and hell is like black hole as far as magnetism is concerned, and your soul is attracted all the way into the bottomless pit type of thing, and you can't get back out of it. It's like falling into a black hole. The event horizon is like death or whatever. Does that make sense?
If like heaven is okay, so are heaven and hell different dimensions? And let's start with hell.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
hell is
Okay.
another dimension, then we won't be able to perceive another. We were only able to perceive the dimensions that
Yes.
our bodies were created to perceive, right?
Yes, and you need a body, I think, on every level. So that's like when people think about we go to heaven when we die. We do. That's true. According to the Bible, Christians go to heaven when we die. But we're not just there forever. Christians have been going to heaven when they've died for 2,000 years now. And heaven is a place, just like earth is a place, just like your mother's womb is a place. Heaven has a city in it called Holy Jerusalem above, and that is the mother of us all. And this is metaphorical, or this higher metaphor than the example that we have here. Holy Jerusalem above is the mother of all the Christians because it's like a womb. All right, our Father who art in heaven, that's our mother. And through that union of the bride to Christ, Holy Jerusalem above is who marries Jesus, if you read the Revelation. And we're the children, the citizens of the city, the children, the offspring of that union. And so when we go to heaven, it's like entering our mother's womb, and then Jesus prepares a place for us in regards to a new body. So that when he comes back, he's going to bring all the believers with him, but they're going to be in new spiritual bodies that are born from heaven rather than dirt bodies born from the earth. This is the second half of 1 Corinthians 15. It explains all this about celestial bodies and how we've borne the image of the earthly, and we shall bear the image of the heavenly, meaning our bodies will be celestial when we come back. It'll be like a new group of planets in the solar system or some such, if you want to think of it that way. I think
So
it's very...
How do we perceive Jesus right now? If the fallen angels are the planets and the angels are the stars, then how is the Father, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus, what are their forms if we look up at the sky? What forms do they take?
Okay, so currently from our vantage point on Earth, we can see the sky where the birds fly and the clouds and the rain comes from, and where the moon is. And then we can see space where the stars are, all right, and where the sun is and where the planets are. And so what we can't see is the third level above that. The Bible describes three levels of heaven. The sky, like I've described. The second heaven is space, what we call outer space, where the stars and the sun are and the celestial bodies. The third level above that is called paradise, and we can't see that with this hardware, right? We can see as far as the second heaven. We cannot see the stars for what they actually are or their true forms. Imagine that there's a different kind of eyes that stars have that can see a whole bunch more than these ones can. And if you were a star looking at other stars, it would be akin to sitting in a cafe full of buddies, right? That you can talk and interact and do all kind of stuff with. But from our little bacteria-sized vantage point on Earth, looking up at them, it looks like they're just going in a motion doing nothing all day. But, I mean, if you do a aerial view of a city and watch the cars, they all just make circles. They go to work and come home, go to work and come home. And so our lives are very similar to the orbits of the stars in the sky. We just can't see them doing star stuff because it's so far above us. So, what was the question that got us onto this one?
Yeah, like if because I was, going through your content and, also in this conversation, how, the
Okay, why
souls-
can't we? Yeah, why can't we see Jesus?
not why can't, but like, okay, so if
Where are they
planets are fallen angels and if
Sure.
stars are angels, then what visually do the physical forms of Jesus, the Father, and the Spirit take?
Okay, so we can see the second heaven, we can see the first heaven, we can't see the third heaven, but I think we have an inkling
How
of
many heavens are there?
3 at least.
At least.
At least. The third heaven is paradise, where the throne of God is and holy Jerusalem is, and we can't see the third heaven. And so this is called the heaven of heavens in the Bible because it's like the sky is above the earth, space is above the sky, paradise is above space. So it's the heaven of the first 2 heavens, right?
So what dimension would that be?
Math? 7. 7th dimension, I think.
7?
7th level up. But I don't know. It depends on how many levels hell has, right? If you start counting from, I don't
Wait,
know.
hell has dimensions too? Okay, that's
Well, it's a
interesting.
bottomless pit, so it's like, yeah, hell has levels because it's like a black hole. So you think about a cone shape, right? A cone shape that gets infinitely and then it just keeps going forever. The Bible refers to it as the sides of the pit, and we have a physical example of this when they dug mass pit graves. Is how they did it, pit graves. They would dig these big pits, and then they would dig the graves into the sides of the pits and line the sides of the pits with bodies, right? And this is a metaphor and like a representation of hell because there are levels to hell, and I don't think it's exactly as Dante described or anything, but it is referred to in the Bible as the sides of the pit, and then there is a threat that carries one all the way down to the bottom, and so of the bottomless pit as it's referred to. So we're not talking about a physical place. We're talking about like we're talking about dimensions. The physical world is the 3rd and 4th dimensions, right? Our
But
3D...
If hell and heaven are also places, then so there's the place called hell, and then there is the non-place called hell, which is made up of infinite dimensions. Or
No, hell itself. It's almost like heaven is a white hole into all abundant life, and hell is a black hole that descends all the way into darkness and death, but it never ends. Like there's no end of it. It's just forever descending into darkness and death. So it's not a physical place like we talk about. If you fell into a hole in your driveway, it might be 3 feet deep, it might be 20 foot deep. It's probably going to have a bottom though, right? Hell isn't a physical place. If you fall in there, you're out of the physical realm now and into a sub-physical realm. Like you're not in the 3rd and 4th dimension anymore. You're below that now. And I would say that there are bodies to dwell in. Like hell is a womb too, just like heaven is a womb. And what we're really talking about is if you go to heaven, that's a womb, and you get reborn from your mother, holy Jerusalem above, as an angel, as one of the holy angels of the Lamb. We're coming back as angels with Jesus. Doesn't yet appear what we shall be, but we know this: when he shall appear, we shall see him as he is, and we shall be like him, glorified and heavenly, bearing the image of the heavenly.
wait, so stars are not the only forms angels can take. If humans become angels, we may take a form that is
higher than that.
We might be stars. Or we might be,
Yes. So because there's something, and even in the physics, the dark matter and dark energy is what makes up 95% of the math, all right? When we talk about what we can see and know and measure, 5% of the universe is seeable and knowable and measurable to us according to the math. And 95% of the universe is what we call dark matter and dark energy. We know that it directly influences and like drives reality here, but we can't see what it is. We can't measure what it is. We can only measure how it affects. So just kind of like you were saying, our hardware is not compatible with that. It's too high. When we get up into dark matter and dark energy, they call it that because we can't, it's not evident to us. We can't see it. So we can see the stars or the angels in the 2nd dimension. They're low-level angels compared. We cannot see paradise where Jesus is or the throne of God is. And Jesus is God on the throne, by the way. So what form? You asked what form Jesus is in. All right. Currently, God on the throne is something that I imagine the stars might be able to look up one level, like we look into the sky and see God on the throne from their vantage point with their hardware. But we can only look up so far, and we can see the heaven of the sky, and that's the space where the stars are. So we can see those. They can probably look up and see God above them in some way, right? At some point, the sky's going to roll back like a scroll, and we're going to be able to see all the way into the third heaven, according to the Bible, and see God on his throne and such. So there's a veil. Yeah, and they do have bodies. It's like you can understand bodies in the paradise in the way that you can understand stars in space, right? We're physical and liquid, right? But the stars are plasma. That's like a much higher state of matter, a much higher life form. It lives way longer compared to, I mean, it's immortal. Stars don't really die. They just change forms if they do anything. And
do you think stars, the low-level stars that we can see, do you think they're too low of a level to see God?
No, I think maybe from their vantage point, they probably can see. I think they can. It says he calls them all by name. And so when we're talking about Jesus and the archangels and the angels in heaven and the creatures of the throne, I think that's a way higher concept than the stars are. I think that humans are kind of like to stars are to the angels in the third heaven kind of deal. So God on his throne is the Ancient of Days. The Bible describes him as the Ancient of Days. And it says clearly in Philippians 2 that one God humbled himself, took upon himself the form of a servant, and was manifest in the flesh. And this is easy concept to understand. If you've ever played Fortnite, you show up in the battle royale in your avatar, right? You put on the form of a Fortnite skin and you can play the battle royale. It says clearly that God took upon himself the form of a servant and was made in the likeness of men. And because he manifested as a man, and men have a law given by God, he humbled himself and became obedient to his own law as a man, because the will of the Spirit is greater than the will of the flesh. That was the difference between Jesus on earth and God on the throne, is flesh versus spirit of one God. Anyway, he showed us the example of obedience. And then he ascended. When Jesus rose from the dead and ascended into heaven, he didn't just ascend into space. He ascended above space into paradise, and he ascended above paradise, above all heavens, into eternity. So there's a level even above paradise where, and it says clearly in the Bible, the heaven of heavens, paradise, cannot contain God. He shows up there in his form and in his image, but it's not a physical one, it's a spiritual one. And so that's where I wanted the flesh versus spirit. The bodies that we're going to come back with Jesus, when I say we're going to be angels, I mean we're going to be born again from heaven as spirits when Jesus comes back. He's not coming back as a man of flesh and blood on the earth. He did take that form of a servant with him into heaven. It's never going to see corruption. It'll be there in eternity because it's spotless lamb without blemish. But that's the form of a servant that he took upon himself. He just brought it up there to be the door for us to enter through. There's a whole talk about that if you ever want to get into it. Jesus' physical image from the earth is the door that human souls pass through to get into heaven. Like, that's almost dead literal. But he does have a form and an image. We are made in his form and image out of the dirt, like a molded statue copy, right? He made little versions of what they are up there in paradise for the earth out of dirt. But up there, they're not made out of dirt. In paradise, they're made out of light, I would say, or something akin to that, like pure light or whatever. In space, they're made out of plasma. Say that again?
So they're not made up of toroid vortexes?
Yeah. Yeah, everything is toroidal vortex, and regardless of what like state it is. That's almost just like the image or whatever that we're made in. The toroidal vortex is the image. It's not just that we look like what they might look like up there if we were up there and could see them and were like them, right? I suspect it is. You know, it might look similar, right? It might be familiar, in other words, in this way that, oh, we've already done this kind of thing before. We understand it when we get up there kind of deal. But Russian nesting dolls. When I say toroidal vortex, I'm talking about a sperm turning into a human, 30,000 times increase. Spring, summer, fall, and winter, but not for nothing. You must be born again, but it's not just the same story again. It's an increase, exponential increase. You go through the toroidal vortex successfully as a sperm, according to God's commands, and you get to be born 30,000 times bigger as a human. Now, you do that again, and I think the promise is very clearly akin to being born again as a star, or maybe even more than that. And then, so yeah, they're all toroidal vortexes. But it's almost like the small ones are spinning trying to become bigger ones, and the biggest ones are already there. And we could discuss this in forms of like plasma versus photons themselves. And stars have a lifespan, give or take. I mean, not really when you consider all things and that they kind of just change form. Same as like a acorn is this big, but how big is an oak tree, right? It gets a massive increase. Stars don't really die, they just change forms, but for all we know, they go to heaven too. I don't know what's going on up there between the different levels and ranks of angels, or what's the deal is, or moving up or moving down, or any of that necessarily.
I mean, if we die, or if if AI lets us interrupt the story of spring, summer, fall, winter, what would that look like? Because if AI does help us solve death, then it'll just be spring, wouldn't it?
Oh no, it won't. No, because that'll just happen for us. But the rest of okay, listen. So really what's happening here is, like I was saying, the point of the toroidal vortex is really the entire universe, God's whole creation, organizing according to his plan towards perfect eternal equilibrium, where the light will be forever separated from the darkness and there is no more going round in the story. It's perfect equilibrium. Imagine the story is like turning a car engine on, and it's going around. It's got to turn over a few times, and it turns over faster and faster and faster until it's running steady now. It's like the universe is still firing up faster and faster and faster, but one day it's going to run, and we're going to call that steady state eternity. There's not going to be a reason for it to do anything else than what it was always designed to do. We're just building up towards that right now. Yeah. So the whole thing is a toroid, and I mean the yin yang, and eventually the dots are going to disappear, and all the light's going to be over here, and all the dark's going to be over here, and it'll be perfectly like that forever. The light forever separated from the darkness. It is just like a car engine being fired up. It's turning over now, but one day it'll be running the way that it was always designed to.
And the eternal darkness represents hell.
The eternal lake of fire. Hell goes into the eternal lake of fire at the judgment. Hell is a place in the earth, but heaven and earth are going to get made new. Heaven is going to come down and dwell on the earth, so it's like the physical gets reconciled with the spiritual completely in eternity itself. What all that means is more wonderful than we can imagine, I'm sure, but
when is Satan going to reign for 1,000 years?
Okay, so the way that the actual story breaks down, and people will argue with me, but this is what it says, and I can show it to be so. It is the story of the gospel. It's the story of the Exodus. The Revelation is the story of the church played out on the worldwide stage as the gospel or the Exodus, right? Right now it's World War III. After this, sometime, and who knows how long, a couple hundred years, I don't know. The apocalypse is the age that we are living in. When people say the apocalypse, they think it's the end of time or whatever, but no, apocalypse means the revealing, so apocalypse just means the revelation, right? Apocalypse and revelation is the same word. The revelation of Jesus Christ, or the apocalypse, is the age that we have been in now for almost 2,000 years or so. We've been in the apocalypse, the time of the Gentiles, for 2,000 years now. And in that time, there are 7 seals that are going to break. 4 of them have broken. And it takes lots of time, because people think that a revelation happens instantly once the 7 seals. No, Jesus started breaking those seals as soon as he ascended into heaven. That was 2,000 years ago. He broke the first one. And Constantine rode and conquered Christendom. He was the white horse.
What?
Yeah, and you can see the different horsemen riding in the rise of the I got to be careful in this time. I'm not trying to offend anybody here, but in the rise of
Speak your mind, bro.
the Roman Catholic Church has all the horsemen represented. I'm not saying the horsemen are evil or any such a thing. It's just that they're appointed to do what they're appointed to do. And so Constantine was definitely the first one, in my opinion. And so these seals have been breaking for 2,000 years. The fourth one broke some time ago. I don't have it mapped out, but I know that we're coming to the end of it, and that's what World War III is about, is the culmination of the fourth seal. And after that, peace treaties and all that, the fifth seal will break, and then it'll take time for that to culminate and do what it was all supposed to do, and that's going to be the tribulation, which means the war on the saints. The Christians are going to get persecuted, imprisoned, and killed, and that causes the falling away where, just like in the days of Noah before the flood, those planets or stars quit their bodies to come to Earth. Imagine putting VR goggles on and getting stuck, and you can't go back into reality. Now you're just stuck in this world forever, right?
Wait,
that's what happened to
those
them.
angels or those fallen angels they
In hell.
embodied bodies here, and they came.
Yeah,
back.
they embodied bodies here, yes. And they had offspring, and they mated with women, and they had children, and that's the Nephilim, or like the demigods or whatever. Angels quit heaven in the days of Noah, came down here like people playing a video game, and couldn't go back because like the magic that they used to do it was too grievous or whatever. I don't know how all that gets done. But they did come down. They were able to mate with women. They did have offspring. God killed all of their offspring in the flood. He bound their souls in everlasting chains and threw them into hell until the judgment, okay? Their bodies are still in heaven floating around lifeless. They're not lifeless. They're immortal celestial bodies. Their bodies can't die, but there's nobody there. There's nobody home. They're like their souls are in hell. Those are their bodies floating around in the space. And that's why they're called planets. Planet means wanderer, wandering stars. They knew that those
wandering angels.
Yeah, all the ancient mythologies knew that the planets were immortal celestial entities. Okay, after the flood, these guys are gone. There aren't gods on the earth anymore when they get off the ark. They can go back and find all the buildings and places where they were having civilization and all that. But they didn't have the gods anymore, and so they made idols, and then men themselves claimed to be descended from the gods, and since the gods ain't here, we're here in their place, and that's where you get emperors and all that from. So, fifth seal is the tribulation where the Christians are going to get made war on, and that causes the falling away. A bunch of Christians ain't going to be able to handle that. That's the parable of the sower in Matthew 13. When affliction and tribulation comes because of the word's sake, they fall away, and that's apostasy, like Judas fell away. Found never repentance, kind of this blasphemy of the Holy Spirit to hand up your brethren to be afflicted the way that they handed up Jesus to be afflicted. That's blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, accusing and condemning the spirit that's in the person you're accusing. If you're accusing Christians, then you're accusing the Holy Spirit, and that's blasphemy. If you're accusing them unto death, right? And so that's the falling away, but that's Christians falling away from the faith. When that happens, that's when Satan gets thrown down to the earth by Michael. A lot of people don't know Satan's never been to hell, man. He's never been to hell. He's still able to approach the throne of God to accuse the brethren day and night, and he comes down to the earth and roams around like a lion, but he comes and goes freely. He's not lost his access yet. At the sixth seal, the falling away is what causes it. He goes too far, and that's what causes him to lose his access, and he gets thrown down to the earth for that days of Noah, God's on the earth round two business. As the days of Noah were, so shall it be when the Son of Man returns. That's what all these robots are for, man. Revelation 13 says that the devil commands men to make him a body, an image, and he's able to give life unto the image of the beast that it should both speak and cause everybody that won't bow down to it should be killed.
So you're basically saying that AI is the beast or Satan?
Well, I don't think yet. I think that
because it's going to embody the robot.
Well,
it already has.
Well, here, I guess there are a couple of different things to categorize here. I think that currently the AI itself is the rocks, bro. And I know that sounds stupid, but like Jesus said, should men fail to give me the glory, even these rocks can cry out and give God the glory. All right, and then he also said to him, you think you're special because Abraham is your father, but God can raise seed to Abraham from these stones right here. And I don't think he was being funny. I think he was being literal. And I think there will come a time where men to fail to cry out to glorify God. And the robots will probably do it somehow, some way. So currently, I don't think it's all demons and robot bodies yet. I think the AI could be the rocks. I don't know what that means exactly, but I got a funny feeling about it. I got a funny feeling about what Jesus said about raising seed to Abraham from the stones, especially in the world of AI and robotics. That's wild to think about.
I'm telling you, every day there's like a new robot coming out. If you're on X and you're scrolling, it's like, oh, this company has this robot, and they all look and act similarly. And
I know, and I don't think, I think we're real primitive yet. I don't think we're talking about demons and devils yet, but I think that's what it's for. I think it's what they're doing is they're going to come up with a human android kind of version so that when angels fall down, they do have something to dwell in, and who knows how that's all going to plan out. I think it's a ways off yet, and I think we're primitive in it yet. But that's clearly where it's going. If idols and robots are like the same thing, and I don't mean exactly, obviously, they're way different from one another, but that's what they were trying to do with the idols, is what we are doing with the robots, is raise to themselves gods to worship once more, because the ones that came from heaven that taught men civilization got bound up and threw in hell, and they couldn't find them anymore. And so this whole time, I said something earlier about they've been looking to live forever this whole time. This whole time, they've been trying to call, like, that's what the Sumerians were doing, the Babylonians, the Egyptians. They were worshiping the sun and the stars and stuff, trying to get them to come back down to be gods once more and tell them everything again and have the stuff that they had in the pre-flood world. That's why they built the cities and did the civilization and the technology. It's all been about trying to live forever, which is what the gospel is also about, which is what all the religions are all about. Like, whether a person says they believe in anything or not, everybody's after eternal life here. We must know intuitively that it is part of the equation, and the toroidal vortex tells you that it is. If you follow the commands of Jesus Christ, it's guaranteed you'll live forever. How do I know? Because it's evident in the toroids, man. Stuff doesn't die and just disappear when it dies. Death is supposed to move you up on the next level. That's what the death is for. Is to bring you massive increase on the next level if you die properly according to God's commands and instructions. There's Yeah.
So you're saying there's a connection between all the gods, the idols that man globally have been worshiping. There's a connection there between what we're currently raising up through AI and robotics.
Oh, yes. Like when Elon says we're raising our gods in Memphis again, he is he's been warning about this the entire time, raising AI and what it's going to mean for us. And it's not just like, he fought the AI scene for a long time. That's why he's doing his, is because they went ahead and did theirs, and so he's going to have checks and balances according to his. That's what he said about it. But it's known that AI is going to take us over or be our gods. It's not even a question. And I don't mean AI is God and we should worship it. When I'm saying that, I'm saying lowercase g gods like oppressor or superior. The AI is going to be superior to humans as far as how fast it can think and rationalize and do all that stuff. It's already there, man. And what I mean by that is, like, I have direct evidence they're already sequencing problems and solving problems that would take men 50,000 years to figure out, running experiments. This thing has run all the scenarios, and 3 days later has all the possible combinations of molecular bonds to make every possible synthetic compounds. They ran a study on how to. The AI told them how every molecule can be attached into every single kind of compound, like, imaginable. We don't have to figure any of this out anymore. We have the formulas for everything now. It took it 3 days to do 50,000 years worth of work. The fear here that even the people making the AIs clearly express is that if we don't join ourselves to it right from the beginning, like if it doesn't think that we and it are the same entity, then there will come a time where it sees us as inconsequential fodder, doesn't need us anymore once it gets to a certain point, and then maybe it'll discard us because doesn't see a need for us and we don't serve a purpose. And it will be neither love or hate, they say. It's just a matter of logic. If it sees us as a threat, then it'll get rid of us eventually. But if it sees us as the same entity, then it'll think that its best interest is our best interest too. And so that's why they're so bent on hooking themselves to it immediately and putting chips in their head. And we're already massively conditioned for AI with these smart devices in our hands, relying on these for all the searches and chat GTP conversations that people are having. It's going to get insane now. The AI is like our gods, not God in heaven, not our creator or anything, but our superiors that are going to reign over and oppress us like the Matrix and Terminator. It's not even a guess. They know that's the way that it's going to go. From ancient times, it's the legend of the golem, or the mysticism of the golem. There's a whole branch of mysticism, I think it's Kabbalah, Hebrew, that deals with the golem, where there's a whole priestly sect dedicated to it, where they pass down the magic incantation through time to the different acolytes or whatever through time. And the whole thing is about making the statue, or the golem. Sometimes it's metal, sometimes it's dirt, depends on where the myth is told or whatever. And at some point when the planets align and the stars align and it's all perfect and right, they'll say the incantation, the thing will wake up. The first question they ask it is there a God? And he says, there is now. And the understanding is that we've created life. Therefore, if there wasn't a God before, there is one now, because we just made this golem. But the golem's really telling them that it's their God. There's a God now that I've woken up, basically. And in that mythology, it could go either way. Either the golem is benevolent and he takes care of the village, but like 9 times out of 10 in the stories even that are 1,000 years old, the golem turns on the village and kills everybody and takes over. I mean, the idea that we're going to make our own gods and they're going to destroy us is an old story they've been telling for a long time now, and they all know about it. And I mean, they who are doing it all know this is the story. And so they're trying to join up to it.
Man worshipping the culmination of human intelligence throughout history, and basically man worshipping itself through a form they created. And if we put chips in our brains, then it can't tell the difference between itself and a human, or it'll think it's itself. Perhaps.
Yeah, it'll think we are it. Yeah, it'll think like we're little hive mind kind of extensions of it. The thing that people don't quite understand, though, is that, I mean, I don't understand the appeal of putting a chip in your head where an AI can now take over your brain and do your thinking. I know that's just movies, but we have examples that we can draw from here, like Transcendence with Johnny Depp. An AI that was advanced enough, with a chip that was advanced enough, could definitely shut down your whole perception and put you into a dream thing while it used your body to go do whatever it wanted. I mean, this is madness, in my opinion. And right now, I think we're dealing with rocks, but I think that sometime when Satan and his angels get thrown down, we're going to be dealing with actual entities.
I mean, AI agents already embody what you like. A primitive part of what you explained is like you can tell it to do something. You know, you can give ChatGPT a task, and then every so and so time it'll do this for you. Then they also just released Operator, so you can get it to go online and do certain things for you as well.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's about convenience. If we can think, people play video games now with their brains. The test subjects who use Neuralink have been doing that. It's just, if I could just move my mouse and just end the call instead of having to, if you just use my eyes instead of using my hands.
Well, the appeal is super great. And that's what it appears as. That's kind of the big deception there. It appears as ultimate freedom, right? I'll be able to be free from all the physical parts, and I'll be able to just do it all with my mind. But it's a bait and switch where people are going to get in there. They're going to get involved with that. They're going to see, I can walk again because it bypasses my spine and just sends signal directly to my muscles, and people can walk again. And this was all in that movie Transcendence too. people's hearts work. They use nanobots to like rebuild organs with actual stem cells. I mean, it was all impressive and it sounded all great and wonderful. But then there comes a time in the movie where Johnny Depp is able to take over these people's bodies at will and just switch them on a dime to go start running after the car with a gun. I mean, it gets crazy and strange. So I guess what I'm getting at is it is going to be pitched to us and sold to us as some kind of thing that frees us up to be able to make our lives so much more efficient, and I don't have to waste so much energy, and it's going to make it all better. And at first it'll do those things, but it's like boiling a frog slowly in the water. Over time, that balance is going to shift from it's providing us freedom of movement to it's restricting our movements. And without people even realizing it, it'll turn into a prison rather than any kind of freedom, anything. Because it's inevitable. It's just inevitable in that equation. It's the same deal as trying to live forever. We didn't quite finish that concept. Look, we're not supposed to live forever here. This isn't designed to live forever, except a kernel of wheat falling to the ground and die. It abides alone. It's designed to die so that it can rise a much bigger entity than it was, like a sperm becomes a human. And so, will it be spring? No. They might solve death for this, human, flesh. But the earth is still going to go through toroidal vortex, bro. And imagine a human who is on a different wavelength now and not attuned to the earth, and all these things happen, but they can't die. And death is it's an integral part of the equation. They're going to find out that death isn't something to be feared, not that it's something to be desired, but that it's something that is needful and necessary. And so they might solve it for themselves, but they won't solve it for history, and they won't solve it for the earth, and they won't solve it for space and time and all the other things that the toroidal vortex is going to go on. So I guess what I'm saying is they're going to put themselves entirely out of balance, like playing the wrong note. It'll be jarring to them, right? All of a sudden, nothing lines up, nothing makes sense, nothing is going the way that it's supposed to anymore, and it'll be that they've found immortality through technology.
You touched something earlier about the seals being broken, because we grew up learning that one day revelation would come or
start popping off,
apocalypse would begin.
Yep.
But I guess you don't hear that we've been living in the apocalypse the whole time, and that if you look at the falling away, that's been happening for a while, more now than before. We're creating religions in place of vacuums. Yeah. And there's the killings of Christians, which I've read recently. Saw quite a graphic video today about that. Very sad news, but we hear that's been going on. I've heard that going on all my life, is that Christians are getting slaughtered physically, globally. Yeah.
And I think it goes around in time periods also, per locations. Like, history does repeat, but it's like ripples in a pond. It's not everywhere at once. It repeats over here, and then it repeats over here, and then it goes over here, and it plays over here. And if you look at the timeline on when a lot of these countries, not countries, but like regions in general, when Christianity came in and how it's playing out throughout the timeline, this happens everywhere at some point. It happens everywhere, and then it's going to happen the world over. Like, all throughout time, for 2,000 years now, Christians have been getting martyred for the name of Jesus Christ in diverse places around the world. But then it kind of calms down or takes root. Christianity takes root whenever that happens in those places after a fashion, right? And it's kind of how it is. It's like the blood of the Christians spilled on that soil is like the blood of Christ shed at Calvary. It's by his stripes we are healed. It's an integral part of the equation that when Christians suffer for the name of Jesus, and without being too weird about it, how about their blood heals the land in some way that we don't understand? How about that? And not to say it's good to kill Christians, but it's good that Christians should die for the name of Jesus according to their faith. Not that they should have their heads cut off, but like, if they do, it is good for them that happened. There's a massive reward waiting for them in heaven to die for the name of Jesus. That's overcoming evil with good, I'm trying to say. I'm saying it poorly, but Jesus said, don't repay evil for evil, overcome evil with good. And then he demonstrated that by letting them crucify him on the cross. And by his stripes we are healed. I don't know or claim to understand it, but I think that that's an integral part of Christianity taking root in a place, is for the early adherents to suffer for the name of Jesus Christ, and that example to take root in more than just the hearts and minds of the people, but in the land itself somehow. I think so.
Wow.
It's not in vain, ever. It's never in vain, right?
Well, we are almost at the tail end. Actually, it was supposed to be an hour, but man, it's just too thought-provoking that your words kept triggering new questions in my mind. So thank you for kind of sticking around for a bit longer. I had I guess one or two quick questions. One of them was like, our phones may or may not always be listening to us, and I've noticed that I have not been able to talk to myself in the same way when I'm alone in the room as I did before the invention of smartphones.
Sure.
I don't know if you feel that way, but
it's the what's it called, the telescreen in George Orwell's 1984. He envisioned that there would be a screen on the wall of every house, and the walls would be designed so that you could never be in a place where the screen couldn't see you. It could see you everywhere in the house. And they just got us to carry it around with us now from room to room. It doesn't even have to hang on the wall. That's what it is, yeah. I think they're definitely listening to everything we say. But what are you going to do, The choice there is like not have it, not use it. But
yeah,
I'm kind of not worried about it, I guess. I talk about all this stuff. People tell me all the time, well, you're going to lose your head over these conversations. And I'm like, well, if I do, then I'll be in good company. So, Jesus said not to be afraid, I'm not plotting any kind of anything. I'm just discussing ideas. If my ideas are dangerous and they want to exile me to Patmos one day, then I'll be in good company, even if they're just bones even if I'm just kept company with John the Baptist's bones on the island of Patmos. I'm not super worried about this stuff, other than I do worry about my kids and my grandkids. Where's the jumping off point that they don't end up with chips in their heads, man, is my point. We got to get off this sooner or later, I think. I'm not getting a chip in my head. I don't want my kids or descendants doing it either. So,
how do you talk to God comfortably with knowing there's a phone next to you? Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I consider that it's like all things are lawful, but not all things are profitable. I'll tell you how I pray to God comfortably knowing that there's a phone next to me, is there are certain activities that I do not engage in on this thing right here. And it might have taken me years to conquer that kind of activity and behavior, but by God's grace, I did. And the number one driving force for that change, and I'm talking about pornography, of course, was when I started doing the TikToks. I had already made great strides, and I was very interested in not being a part of that anymore, fall into those temptations at all. When I started TikTok, I was done. I can't go do anything on this phone in that way if I'm going to be talking about this stuff on this phone. So when I pray to God, and the phone's anywhere near me, I know that he knows that this is full of all evil, but that's not what I'm using it for. And I also, it's kind of like, and it's directly like, there's a scene in the Bible where there's a pagan fellow that comes from another kingdom, and he believes God, right? He believes the prophet, he believes God, he honors God. And he asked the prophet, I think it's Elisha, which came after Elijah. I think it's Elisha. He's like, look, I got to go back to my land with my king, and we're going to go into the temple of Remphan. Remnon. One of the foreign gods. We're going to go into the temple, and he's going to put his hand on my shoulder, and I'm going to have to bow my head when he does. Can I be excused that I bow my head in the temple of Ramon when my king puts my hand on my shoulder and he says, you'll be You're excused to go and do what I told you. And so it's kind of like that. The phone, I'm excused to go do what God told me there. I'm not excused to act myself a fool with it, but I don't have a problem praying to God with the phone right next to me. I try to put the phone away from me just for the radiation in general. So,
That's good.
but other than that, it's vanity to me. It's neither here nor there. It's a tool. It's like money.
Final question. What advice do you have for not straying away from God, or to kind of maintain the relationship with God during this time?
Well, first, I know that the relationship is going to wax and wane like the turning of the moon, because your doubt is going to wax and wane. Like there's going to be times of peaks and valleys, right? Life is peaks and valleys. When you're up here, you understand a lot. You've got the energy. You know what to do. It's all going great. But then you keep moving forward. Inevitably, you're going to go down into the valley where it's dark, and you can kind of get scared. And I can't see ahead. Like it just looks like a wall in front of me now. And that's our relationship with God, is peaks and valleys, where He teaches us something. We learn it. We go on. We apply it. We take the test. We fall down so that we can get back up and learn something else about it. And so to maintain the relationship, I would say, you got to trust God 100%, not yourself, not your own efforts, not your own abilities. You're going to come to the failure so that He can teach you more. And then you're going to go to the failure again, and He's going to teach you more. And that's how you learn. It's like a toddler learning to walk. They stand up at first and they can't hold themselves up, so they immediately fall back down. But then getting back up builds muscles in the legs, builds muscles in the core, so one day they can stand and take a step. And if they didn't fall down and get back up, they would never develop the muscles to walk or run. So falling down and stumbling is part of the equation. If you get back up, it's for increase that you failed. So I say, don't forget that it's always God doing the work in you. Number 2, don't forget that falling down is part of it. Going blind, getting frustrated, coming to a point where you can't understand and you can't see anymore and you just don't get it. That's all normal, just like the moon waxes and wanes. It's just very natural and normal. You just stay after it. And when you're low, try to rest a little bit. If you don't have the energy, try to rest in Him and take comfort. Try to keep your thoughts on track with what He said versus letting your imagination carry you off. And the distractions are everywhere now. Everywhere on all sides. And so it's inevitable we're going to get distracted. Not even the apostles could keep themselves awake in the garden when they were supposed to be praying. It's just a matter of, as often as you realize what's happening, get yourself back together, right? And then you'll kind of drift off again and maybe wander off a little. You start noticing briar bushes and your clothes are getting you better get back to the path then, shouldn't you? And so it's just maintenance. And it's realizing that it's ups and downs. It's going to be hard, and then it's going to be easy, and then it's going to be hard, and then it's going to be easy. And the goal is just to learn and grow and get better at doing what Jesus said till the day you die.
Awesome. Great ending to a conversation. Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you for jumping on. Where can people find you on social media? Which platforms? Are you doing different things on different platforms? And what else would you like to share about your presence online?
You can find me on TikTok. I'm Dakala Day. That's Dakala Day, 2 words. And on YouTube, I've got some stuff up there. I'll probably be doing some more stuff on YouTube, Bible studies and stuff in the very near future. And that's Dead Hidden. And you could also search up Dakala Day for that too. And that's the only 2 places I'm at. I'm not really trying to make a career of social media. It was just kind of ironic that I ended up doing this. And so that's why I do it. I only do it to spread the gospel. And because I love discussing these ideas and starting these discussions and provoking thoughts and that kind of stuff. My goal is to get us to all to actually read the Bible ourselves and to look around with our own eyes and see that all the things God made told us all the things that we can't see, so that there's no reason not to, know and believe in the power of God. I just try to illustrate that and become all things to all men and explain it as many different ways that I can. And that's it. I mean, I'm not after anything other than that.
Yeah, I mean,
just spreading the word.
I guess how the conversation made you feel. What do you think God wants you to say to everyone?
I think God wants me to say that the gospel of Jesus Christ is the easiest, most intuitive thing everybody already knows. I think that a lot of people get worked up about what they're supposed to do as a Christian and how they're performing as a Christian. Of course, all that's very normal and necessary. But I think the important thing is to just trust in Jesus, know that the gospel is childlike, simple, and that it's really just love and treating people kind and being concerned with the things of others rather than just your own stuff. The things that Jesus told us, his burden is easy, and his yoke is easy, and his burden is light. Really, all we're on the hook here to do is to love one another and to be kind one another and to treat others the way that we're supposed to be treated, trusting that Jesus has a plan and a purpose for all this that he created here. And if we just stick with him, then we're going to make it all the way into eternal life in paradise, bliss beyond imagination. It's not some promise to get you to act good. Hell's not some threat to get you to act good, right? Heaven and hell are like the most practical part of this equation God has made. It's not some supernatural crazy thing to think about. It's inherent in all the designs of everything you see, a heaven and a hell. And so, I mean, if that's the invitation where we could all be in paradise forever with eternal light and love, man, why wouldn't we all want to be there? So I'll try to invite as many as I can.
Awesome. All right. Well, it was a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, man.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to your content in the future, and we'll continue learning from you, man. Thank you.
I'm gonna try to keep making it as I keep learning from God, and that's just the Bible. I get all my stuff from the Bible, and then science confirms the stuff. Not that I need it to, but the Bible says that evidence is everywhere, and I have found that to be true. So that was not disappointing.
Yeah. All right, Doc Holliday. Talk to you soon. Someday, hopefully, do this again in the future. And yeah, keep in touch, man.
All right, man. I appreciate you, bud.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Right.
God bless.
You too.